All right, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. We've got the E98 boys here today. We've got Jack Butcher, NFT champion, back at it again. Trung Phan, me Master Flex himself, and Bilal Zaidi. Boys, it's been a crazy, this is going to be a banger episode. I can feel it already. We've got the checks chaos going on. It's number one on OpenSea. We got Beeple creating checks from my boy Jack Butcher's work. We got some crazy stuff to talk about there. We're going to be talking about the Tiffany and Nike collab.
Man, if the listeners could just see my face right now when you said Jack Beeple, that got me hard, dude.
Yeah, following on from a few weeks ago, exactly. And then we're going to introduce you guys to ChatGPT and talk a little AI chat. We're going to be talking about the new announcement from Google announcing Bard AI
is
and
Google
some
just
AI
bad
porn.
At naming products? Bard
Man, that's
is
a terrible
an
name. I'm not a fan of the name, to be honest.
Name.
But
crazy.
God, awful name.
I want to know the story, like who the hell named, like
The
what
hardest
was
one-syllable word I've ever heard.
Bard. Yeah. All right, so boys, let's just get straight into it. Jack, there's only one place to start. I think we're gonna have to do a meme in a week.
Yeah, let's get some visuals. I mean, if you're listening and you haven't seen Beeple, like the NFT artist extraordinaire, did a riff on one of Jackson. Can we pull the
we'll
meme
pull
up?
it up in a second, but I'm going to pull up the meme first because this is NFT update said, I'm telling my children this was Tom Brady, and it's a picture of our very own Jack Butcher. There was another person who did one saying, I'm going to tell my children this was Jesus. So, mate, what is going on? Because you have been absolutely tearing it up since the last time we spoke. I've got a few things on my list here. Beeple, obviously, we're going to show that in a second. Budweiser, that was right in the beginning of the week. That was kind of a funny little thing as well. I'm pulling that up right now. Budweiser tweeted something about checks as well. You've raised crazy amounts of money. You've helped raise the crazy amounts of money for the earthquake that happened. But yeah, so mate, we'll throw it over to you. Like, what has happened since the last time we saw you? You said you've had your parents in town as well. You're probably on like 3 hours sleep, just churning it all out. What's going on your side,
What are
man?
the dopamine levels at? What are the dopamine levels at?
That's
Be
crazy.
honest.
I mean, honestly, it's nuts. The just next level amount of activity around this thing in the last maybe 3 or 4 days is like really went crazy. The Beeple thing. So he did one last week. Do you see the checkmark one? It was like
can we pull that up?
Yeah, I saw it too. I'll pull them up while we're talking. Go on.
So the initial one was people standing in the row. How big is your check mark? It was a cool little riff on it.
Does he have one?
I have no idea. Okay. I have to look it up. And then I think we've talked about this guy before, but there's a NFT collector, artist, patron of the NFT community called Vincent Van Doe.
Incredible name, by the way. Yeah.
Insane name.
Yeah, I've seen his stuff before.
And he, I'm assuming it's a he, based on the conversation I had with him. Had
on the bats.
Did a version of checks. He called it Pepe checks. He changed all the checks in the grid to Pepe the Frog's face, and sold $1.5 million of open editions in 24 hours.
Wow.
I think they were $6 each or something like that. So,
and it was $6 too. That's crazy. So that was a lot of energy. Someone do the math for me.
It's like 240,000 something.
Jesus
NFTs.
Christ, that is wild.
For the people wondering if Trung or Bilal got in early on that, no, we did not get in early on any of this. I still don't own a check, and I can no longer afford one. So let's get that out of the way. All right. So
and by the way, while you're doing it, I'm just pulling up the Beeple one that you're mentioning. So this is on his Instagram. It's obviously on Twitter as well. You're talking about this one, yeah, Jack?
That's the first one. Yeah.
How big is your check mark? Up
and then the other
right.
one, I could not.
This one is incredible.
I could not believe when I saw this one. Absolutely mind blowing,
Dawn of
man.
check. Here we go.
Dude,
we're gonna.
You might have to do the bottom right there, man. Take care of that blackout, that DM thing you had there. Yeah, that's fine.
Anyway.
The reason I brought it up is the reason why we're talking about the AI porn guy later. The Twitch streamers, he was live streaming his desktop, and some sketchy shit was on there.
Get caught slipping. But anyway, Jack, could you just give us a little riff on this? First of all, I mean, was I right in saying that's visualized value in the corner, right?
Yeah, little.
Oh my
little
goodness,
inscription.
man.
Beautiful.
Man,
Beautiful.
It's just epic, man. I mean, I love this thing for a number of reasons, but obviously it's completely surreal to be
Jack, did he just post it and tag you and you realize, or did he what you just tagged it and you're like,
Yeah,
damn.
how something like this happen?
The first one wasn't tagged. The second one was. So the first one, I mean, Beeple's work is always kind of, he's just got his ear to whatever's going on. And normally, I think, or I wouldn't say normally, he had a lot of political commentary for a phase of his career, especially Trump era politics and like Elon's Twitter takeover, all of that stuff. So this like fed in, I think, to a lot of the things that his work has been a commentary on for the last few years, and specifically like the communities within the NFT world, because obviously he is still holding that title of the single highest price piece of NFT ever auctioned. So he's like obviously a huge character in that community, and commentary on that has become part of his the art that he puts out. So a response to how much that took over the zeitgeist for 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it was, and still seeing stuff like bubble out of that. Like, I guess I could show you my notifications and just
dude, hit it.
The tagged.
Well, for the listeners, also, Jack has been sending us some of the unsolicited DMs he's been getting, which are absolutely madness. Just imagine like the worst like Nigerian prince like scam DM you've ever gotten, and like he's been oh my goodness. So this is just nonstop.
Yeah, this one's so badass. Look at this, like, just sick. So
wait, Jack, this is just random people creating stuff and tagging you in it, or what is it?
Yeah, this is just the tags of. Like,
that Eagles one is quite cool.
Yeah, there's just endless amounts of.
Yo, that CryptoPunk one.
This is 25 minutes ago. Still, like you've been scrolling for ages, and it's only tweets from 25 minutes ago. That's crazy.
That's it.
Wait, Jack, who made the CryptoPunk looking NFT?
Me.
Yeah. So
And
Jack, do you want to give a little?
You sold that as an you sold it as a one-of-one?
Because I think we've talked about it on the pod a few times, but let's just give a quick recap, because for someone who's listening for the first time, they don't really know.
What
and
is
just
checks?
maybe explain, checks, and also you've been swapping out the art and the idea of like what that, all the kind of ideas of what you're doing there.
So the way in which the original NFT was sold, it's an edition, which is essentially a token that points to the same image, right? So the art for every piece is exactly the same. And as a function of how that was minted, I have the ability to update the image that points to. So, it's like sacrilegious in NFT land, because you're supposed to be, I think it's like challenging the conception of what an NFT is. Like, is this an image that I bought, or is this a relationship with an artist that I am, it makes it more of a performance than a piece, right? You have all of this incredible opportunity to tell a story, to challenge people's conceptions around this thing. So it started as one image, changed to another image, changed to another image. The underlying format is the same, like the 80 checkmark grid.
Yeah.
But what that does is it allows you to keep the underlying structure of the meme and comment on other things that are happening, which is what's happening as a conversation with all the people on Twitter too. The format has become this thing that people can add to, people can remix, people can make their own interpretation of. Somebody, I know we love a Virgil quote on this pod, and we've done a few episodes on Virgil. Somebody dropped this great quote, which, by the way, I'm not claiming to have been the architect from the top of this. This happens to be a characteristic of this thing. It says, the end user should have space to input something into a design or artwork. That's a Virgil quote. So this idea of making something that is owned by everybody, or if everybody feels like they have a piece of it, whether or not they in inverted commas, own it or not. It's a conversation between a bunch of people, and it's simple enough that it allows all this remixing to happen. And you have this token that represents the art in its entirety and all of this like community activity surrounding it. So, man, it's been incredible to watch. And I think maybe the best outcome of it is people just getting into this world for the first time and removing the pressure and the amount of overthinking that people do in like, am I an artist? Being an artist is like this thing that people think they like have to one day wake up, declare themselves an artist, and then like if a piece of work doesn't sell, they're not an artist. I don't think that's true. It's the way in which this accessible price point has changed the entire environment, I think is very positive overall. Wait,
Jack, I think we should dig into this. So explain the mint mechanics. How many were sold on that first day and what date it was? Let's make this a bit of a historical artifact.
So it was 16,000 plus, I think, the first one, right?
16,031 pieces sold for $8 a piece.
And each piece was this grid of checks.
Yes. And that has been going on. I didn't come up with this idea of an open edition mint by any means. That's kind of, until recently, that mechanic has basically been, something that an artist can do as a lower price point access thing for a bunch of people who perhaps can't afford to bid on a one-of-one piece of art, right? And I think in the last couple of years, the figures that are recognized as the most prominent artists in the space are judged by how much a single piece of work sold for. Especially artists, right? Because a lot of these like profile picture projects, the people who are the face of them or the people who represent them, they didn't make the work. They're good operators or good marketers. They like assembled a team of people, in some cases anonymously, to make the art. And what this does, I feel like, is, and what I'm trying to demonstrate with the ability to change the art, is you almost have this networked billboard as a function of all of these people collecting your work. And that is a much better place to start for somebody who's trying to get a story off the ground, put their art out into the world, than pricing a piece of work at 20 grand, 30 grand, even, $1,000. Like, the number of people that can afford that work, like, honestly, I would be interested to see the statistics on that. Like, number of people who have ever spent more than $1,000 on a piece of art is probably in the fractions of a fraction of percent.
You're including NFTs in that, though, right? Yeah. Are you saying traditional art? Yeah.
I'm saying art. I'm saying as a decision.
I got 10 of those in 2021.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm saying as a decision to like collect a piece of art, which I think in a lot of cases, this new environment has shifted the context on, where 2 years ago these two things were totally separate. Collectibles and art, they felt like they fell into totally different camps, completely different cultures. They feel like there's a merge of those two things happening right now. I'll just stop
smashing
for him.
Yeah, I think we lost Trunk for a minute. We can just keep going until he comes back. But so yeah, that's amazing background. Now I'm just going to share my screen as well for the charity stuff you did as well, because I think this is pretty cool. So using the same canvas, can you see that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is something you did. This is for the relief in Turkey and Syria with the earthquake that just happened. So could you just tell us a little bit about this? Because you did this and you did one other one a few days before that as well, for meals, I think.
Yeah. So the meals one was actually from earlier last year. It was in September last year. I put it up, or November last year, around Thanksgiving. I didn't realize that. Actually, right. It's like as a realization that there's a lot of hungry people. Well, a lot of people are just gluttonously stuffing their faces, so it felt right. But this second one on the earthquake is like, there's all this attention in this format, so why can't we leverage some of that attention to redirect it into something that has immediate real world impact, like getting doctors to people who need medical attention. So yeah, it's taking the same checks, grid, meme, whatever you want to call it, and signaling this idea, first aid, that, you know, that iconic first aid symbol. And I think there's like, that's just one way to use this. And again, like, looking back retrospectively at this thing coming to existence, is just created a lot of angles for using all of the attention that it creates in the macro and directing it really specifically at micro things. And, you know, the 15-minute spotlight, or the amount of attention that I know how fast this stuff comes and goes. And this time I definitely want to do as much as I can to, you know, make the second order effects of that attention much more lasting, and, you know, not just be about people who clearly have the time and resources to sit at home talking about and trading and buying and selling art. That's so that's hopefully much more of that to come. But, you know, you never know how long the attention storm is hovering over you.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. So, and then the other thing is, so how much has been raised from it? It's 97K, you said?
Should be around that, yeah.
Almost 100 grand. And this is in a few days, right? So pretty incredible. And I know we did a whole episode back in the day about like reinventing charity and stuff like that, or like what you can do.
Philanthropy.
Crypto philanthropy, which is quite a cool episode if you never listened to it. Yeah, like we did a whole episode on this in the past, but just to contextualize that for people, 97K in a few days for charity is like a lot of money. Like, it's really difficult to do that. Like, if you do a big brand collaboration, let's say with Nike and Tiffany, which we're going to talk about in a minute, or, you know, like a bunch of big companies that have billions in dollars in revenue, like a lot of them would do that in a whole year, you know, that amount of money. And they're like big companies with resources. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Just like you said, the meme of it, the attention on it, that you can divert it and say, hey, we're going to remix this right now. And this is a quick, easy way for people to give to it, which is really cool. So, Trung, did you have any other questions on the check stuff?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the $8 because Jack was talking about the accessibility of the project. Obviously, 16,000 mints, but I think it was less. It was like 4,000 or 5,000 people total. But the accessibility was huge, right? Anybody could get $8. But big function with that that was obviously that the Twitter Blue cost $8, right? Was it just like a pure coincidence? Like if Twitter Blue, that whole meme hadn't existed,
yeah, that was the commentary, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Jack,
would you have still tried to price it? Would you still try to price it under like call it single digits? Or would you have even done the project?
The price is part of the idea, yeah. It's just like it's all kind of interwoven. Yeah, there's a bunch of different influences on it, but yeah, that is integral for sure. Like one of the big parts of the commentary is the transition to a world where you can purchase status in inverted commas for $8, and obviously there's visual. How that ties into the visual layer is this can mirror famous works of art, but it's obviously a parody of that because you're using this symbol that represents authentication that is, you know, at the same time being called into question what authenticity is and how you get it and who bestows it and all of these different ideas that layer on top of that, and who is this idea, who is notable and who isn't. The caption for the original piece and the collection right now is this artwork may or may not be notable. And I think overall that speaks to and tries to call into question who decides what is notable. Like the legacy popover, which Trung, I think you got rid of now, but you know, if you were the Web 2 journalist, let's call it, the transition that was made with Twitter Blue changed your hover state on your blue check to this may or may not be notable. We know there was some like fuckery going around with people paying for like 2 Fortune syndicated articles and then getting their blue check mark that way. And not just like, there's obviously so much depth and nuance to this discussion, and no, I'm not necessarily even taking a stance. I'm just asking people to consider.
So the $8, I mean, the whole point being, the answer to me sounds like this: if there wasn't the $8 Twitter Blue, all of it, I mean, the project is based on the premise of this thing existing, like the idea of Twitter Blue, notable and not notable. If that whole blow up hadn't happened in November around Elon takeover, removing of legacy, like this project wouldn't exist in the same,
in this form. No.
I because think that's the whole point, right? It's a commentary on it.
Yeah, I think of this as like basically drilling for oil. This idea of if you can create something that taps into consciousness in a way that explodes this level of attention, that to me is how this feels. Like great pieces of media are able to capture a feeling or a moment in time or something that people are responding to and just bottle it up. And the more succinctly you can do that, the faster that travels. And that's why I think this thing has exploded a creative renaissance of sorts, is because that symbol has so much embedded context, and flipping it on its head and saying, no, you can use it. Like nobody owns that symbol. It's like you go to the Wikipedia page for verification. It says this cannot be copyrighted because it's like it's made up of shapes. You can't copyright a shape. So this idea that all of this shit was a meme in the first place that came from decisions made by a handful of social media companies versus all the people that create value on a platform being quote unquote notable. And Elon's a master of memes too, right? Tapped into that idea of the blue check mark being this desirable thing. And whether or not it even plays out as the long-term thing, Twitter Blue could eventually be Twitter Blue and you just drop the check mark, just remove the icon, right?
Yeah.
Or just change the icon to something else. Like I guess the argument or the conversation is like how much, like what does that represent now? It's not this thing that requires closed door approval for somebody to get it. Well, and I think that aligns, sorry to interrupt. I think that aligns with all of the principles we're talking about in decentralizing anything. It's like the cryptographic signature is the thing that proves this is me, not what someone in the bin at Twitter approving accounts
or YouTube
decides, right?
Yeah.
So that to me is conceptually what made it blow up, is give the power back and give the ability to verify work, commentary, people, pixels to anybody.
I got a comment and 2 questions. So my comment is, so I did get a blue check mark through HubSpot because I tried many times on my own, right? Like kind of the jokes that Jack was alluding to. Like I was on CNBC, I had a Bloomberg mention. I'm like, guys,
please verify me.
I looked at the rules. I should be verified every time, just rejected by like a computer, right? And then one day, I just woke up. Half the Hustle team just got verified because somebody on the social team knew somebody in Twitter. It made no sense.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. The
dopamine
was out of control that day.
How did you feel, Trung, when anyone could go and buy it for $8?
What's that meme with the guy looking down the nose? On the
you got to make a checks version of Trung's original profile with the old verification tick. Someone else to do that.
FUMS. I told y'all not to sleep on me. I told y'all not to sleep on Trung. And it had nothing to do with it, right?
And Trung, that was the perfect follow-up, because that's the feeling that we're coasting off of, right? Regardless of how legit this thing is, everybody loves it.
My legit path towards it, like the ones by the letter of their law, got rejected. One day, woke up.
Some dude knows somebody.
Yeah.
This is how I found out. Twitter Verified started following me. I'm like, oh, what's up with this? And what is this? And no, dude, it was so irrational. It's like you said, it was ridiculous. So I thought I could add that context.
That is perfect.
But your boy Trung is paying for Twitter Blue. News came out yesterday that only 180,000 people are paying for Twitter Blue. It's like on a $25 million a year run rate. Our boy Tane, that we reference every now and then, he said that he estimated that in terms of the advertising money that was lost from the Twitter Blue fiasco, when people were buying Twitter Blue and like pretending to be different brands, like the defense contractor or the pharmaceutical company.
George Bush.
They're like, that was like a lost $80 million. And then people were like dunking on Elon's like, oh, he failed. Okay, listen, the problem with Twitter Blue is they really haven't added anything, right? There's a lot of cases to be made for subscription product. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Jack's mentioned it. I don't know, Bilal, you're on Twitter Blue, but we've said this is like, I've gained so much from Twitter. Jack has gained so much from Twitter. It's like, I'm happy to give Twitter money. Like the people complaining about Twitter, they're on there like getting into these flame wars every day. Maybe they're just not using it right. It's like Twitter is, as we know, is an extremely powerful platform. If you're like even if you're not an honest operator, unfortunately, but like if you really are there just being authentic, like just trying to have a good time, you can get a ton of benefit from it. I'm happy to give him money. I've given money to way shittier things, right? And gotten zero value out of them. But I'll add that. Yes, 25 million a year is not a great run rate.
Yeah, and just to read what Tane said, he said, my guess is Twitter lost more than 3 times that in ad revenue because of brand impersonation concerns during the initial rollout of the verification badge. And the Twitter Blue is at 25 million ARR estimate.
I think Twitter Blue will end up being a decent, like a good number.
I guess maybe, based on what as well? Sorry.
Internal estimates from the information. I think they got their hands on some.
You're saying like what the sources, Jack? You're saying, or
yeah.
Information.
I just haven't read it.
290,000 global subs. So I guess they just times out by 8 times 12, and that obviously doesn't take into account churn and people not being there for the whole year or whatever.
So I think we've talked about this before. I wouldn't judge this move particularly. I mean, listen, it's easy to dunk 3 months in, and in a way, he is inviting a lot of it because of how vocal he's been about these things. But yeah, let's revisit this. It's obviously not a great number, and I suspect that in the end, Twitter's just going to have a way better ad product. Like Bilal's talked about it before. They just are not. Just from ad tech, they're just not good, right?
But it's getting like, better, isn't it, Bilal? Like I'm getting
maybe.
Celia's buying stuff on there. I'm telling you.
Really?
That's crazy. Yeah. Celia, but no, honestly,
I've just noticed more ads. I don't know if that's just me.
I've noticed more ads. Some of them are decent, actually. Some of them are just not good at all. But I mean, that's just the nature of advertising on the internet. Let's leave that. Let me get to my 2 questions. I don't know how much
they've changed yet, to be honest, on the ad side. But we can revisit that later.
Let's revisit actually, Bilal. This is your domain. We'd love to if you get some insights, definitely share them. But so 2 questions. So Jack, I still don't understand the mechanics of this. For the listeners, people stop DMing me. I had no inside information. I did not get in early. I get asked once a day, hey man, how early did you get in on this? Man, that's your co-host. I'm like, you guys don't understand. I don't know shit. So here, explain this to me. Okay.
We called you Fiat fan for a long time for a reason. Trung, here we go.
For the listeners, I've pulled up one of Jack's checks. This one looks like, so this is a 6-figure one, Jack, is this correct?
So
sold for 6 figures?
No. So here's the nuance.
Okay, can you tell us what this is? Tell us what this is.
Yeah, so this is the current image that the checks metadata points to. So the collection of 16,030 is pointing to this image right now.
So you, as the owner, whoever buys this gets to write to that pointing of this 10x8 grid that looks like some of the checks, the majority of them are gray and indiscreet. The rest of it looks like a CryptoPunk. You've done it in the shape of a CryptoPunk, right?
The most expensive CryptoPunk sale ever. So this CryptoPunk sold for $29.8 million.
That's the Figma founder, Dylan Field, selling it to...
No. Selling it to,
Bragucci, yeah. So can you tell me, you changed this though. It didn't look like this initially, this piece of artwork. You changed it.
Correct.
Okay, so my question is this. All right, you mentioned this earlier. This is what I'm trying to get to the nuts of. Is it nuts the right word? That's the wrong word. Get to the guts of it.
Yeah.
People, you know what I'm talking about. All right. Jack has this photo that has changed. Initially, it was just white checks in this grayish black background. Is that correct?
It was multicolored.
It was colorful. Okay. Yeah.
So then my question is this. You changed this to the most expensive CryptoPunk sale ever. So obviously this is going to be mimetic. It's going to have a lot of value. Looks like this is resold. I'm probably incorrect here. Did it not resell for 6 figures, this new artwork?
Well, the entire collection has this image on it for however long I keep it on there. So the sales that happen while this image is the image that represents the collection, technically you could say that, yes. Okay,
so my question is this. How do we know that you're not picking and choosing which ones and you know the owner of, like, if I own this, I'm like, oh man, I'm Japs the boy. He's gonna turn this into a CryptoPunk. That's gonna be extremely valuable.
I think all of them are.
They
right?
all
They're all
change
changing at the same time.
They all. What do you mean they all changed? How many changed? 21 of them changed.
Every
not
single
all of
one.
them.
Every single one changes to this image.
Wait, all 16,000?
Yes.
Oh, Jesus, Christmas. So why is this one more valuable than the other ones?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Also, when you change, everything's changing at the same time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yo, okay.
Shrug is mind blown.
Okay,
This is
but
why
hold on a second.
This is the commentary going on.
How many times have you changed all 16,000?
5.
Okay, so when you're changing them, you're putting some thought. You're not just doing it willy-nilly, right?
No.
So okay.
None of this is willy-nilly.
Okay, so then explain this to me.
None of this is really.
Why is this? So what it says here? DV edition sold for 76 ETH, 125,000.
So that is a number of them. I think it's 21 editions. It's someone bought 21 of them at the same time.
Oh, okay, not this, because everybody had this.
Correct.
Oh, dude, this is my dude. What if you just wanted this though? Like, what if I own this? I'm like, yo, this is dope. Don't change it. Doesn't matter.
Don't buy what you don't understand.
Yeah. Oh shit. Oh my god. Okay. So
what is an NFT? That's the whole point. Like what?
Okay.
What
Jack,
are you buying?
Yeah.
What is this?
Did you guys already talk about the royalty on this?
No, we didn't talk about that yet.
Okay, we're going to talk about this now because you just blew my mind. So, Jack, I'm going to ask about, I know I'm not supposed to ask about money, but I'm going to do it. It's too late.
Well, to clarify, Jack has never said not to ask about money.
Yeah.
That was a listener.
Well, the listener actually commented after. He's like, Trung, like, I didn't mean to slap your wrist. He's like, I'm just playing around. But like, there's more to this. And as Jack is showing and blowing my mind, there is more to this. So, royalty. When you began this project, you made whatever amount. We don't have to talk about it from the initial sale. And then afterwards, you put if you would like, whatever percentage you'd like on additional sales, this is what you can give back to the original artist.
So here's the there's a lot of nuance to this, and I don't understand it as well as people who are like technically building the infrastructure. But basically what's happened in the last 6 months or so around the secondary market of NFTs is marketplaces have created their own rules about royalties. So because this stuff is all permissionless, technically there are ways around paying royalties, right? So if I decide to send you something directly, we could do an over-the-counter thing, Trung, and the artist doesn't have to know about it, the market doesn't have to go through a marketplace, all of that stuff. So early on, because there was only one marketplace basically, or there's a couple of marketplaces that all are kind of abided by this social contract that artists are going to get their royalties, it all went swimmingly and everybody's getting paid secondary, all that stuff. Over time, all these competing products have come out and said, we found a way to get around it. We're going to do, flat 0.5%. OpenSea lets you set it, but now if you set it on OpenSea, you have to block these other marketplaces. There's a bunch of nuance that goes into this, right? And to begin with, when the piece went on to secondary market, I decided not to enforce it from the top down because I preferred this idea of them being able to operate on all these other marketplaces, right? Specifically Blur, if you guys have heard of this, but it's like the second biggest platform. So OpenSea is huge. Blur is probably, 20-30% of OpenSea. It's just unbelievable.
And what happened to the other one? What happened to the decentralized one? What was the other one called?
Looks Rare. They're still going and stuff, but it's OpenSea and Blur. Those are the two. Okay. Those are the two big ones. So in order for it to trade on Blur, I had to keep the royalties optional. So Blur pays a flat at this point in time, paid a flat 0.5% on everything.
And they eat anything above on the optional. So if a buyer's like, I want to give this guy 10%, they're eating 9.5% and giving you 0.5, because that sounds like bullshit.
No, you can pay extra. But it's just going to be added to the total.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
good.
So you could volunteer to pay extra, but Blur is like, I'll show you a screen share of it. This is like weapons grade,
like this looks like way more than this looks like a proper trading platform, whereas OpenSea is much more in the art kind of like, here's the visual.
OpenSea is, it's like eBay basically, you're like going listing by listing, and this is like,
This is return of the edge of the internet segment, by the way.
Yeah, dude, how hard are you? I mean, dude, Jack, the dopamine just must be ink. You got a newborn, man. Oh my goodness. Your brain must just be out of control right now. And your parents are in town. Man, you're out of control,
times,
bro.
Crazy times, boys. So I'll try and wrap this up. It's pretty dry, but the 5%, the 0.5% is flat on Blur. 2.5% was optional on OpenSea, and when it's optional, it's on the seller to decide. So when I relist something, I decide whether or not I want to send royalties to the original creator. So obviously, as a project gets more people get more interested in it, the price of the art goes up, which means the number that is represented in the preview when you're about to list it goes up. So fewer and fewer people volunteer to put it in there, right? So this they're inversely correlated. If the royalties are optional, as the art gets more expensive, the amount of people that send or opt into the royalties goes down. And then I'm going to completely botch the technical understanding of this, but like a week ago, something got shipped that allowed the 2.5% royalty to be enforced on Blur, and I switched that back on. So it's about a week ago. So now on those two platforms,
also both OpenSea and Blur now have the 2.5%.
Correct.
All right, great.
Yeah. What that does is it restricts some functionality on Blur, which is like bidding, where people just can go in and just like make an offer on an entire collection, but overall feels to me like nets out more fairly. And 2.5% in this space is, some like one of the lowest I've ever seen.
That Bored Ape is 6.9%, is that right?
Correct.
So just for context for people,
we're building something here and have like people to pay and stuff.
Of course, and no one's against anyone making money
Jack,
in this as well.
How big is the team working on this? Like even part-time contract? Like how many people do you have working on this?
Two, a guy called Jalil and Traf. So Jalil's doing all the back end work and smart contract engineering, all that stuff. Traf is like front end design. Two absolute freaking genius legend dudes that I met through Visualize Value, known them for 3 or 4 years. It's just like perfect. It's just a perfect storm. Like there's no way I could have gone to like the open market and found people with this level of talent and like the trust that exists, where it's like, here's the idea, like implicitly trust these guys to do an incredible job of it. And then we've had a couple people come in to do like audit the contracts, make sure everything's working right, and put second set of eyes on it. But 3 of us.
Incredible.
Jack, let me leads to my last question. Actually, I wanted 2, but I know that we can actually keep this one because
that's so good. Gone.
The second question I was going to ask is could checks ever be as big as CryptoPunks? I think we should leave that one because let's not blow our load just yet, okay, people? Let's not put the cart in front of the horse. Antonio, you might want to bleep that. Okay. This is what I wanted to ask you, Jack. So you have experience going viral, putting memes out into the world. Like, I think that this is pointless. I've seen it everywhere. Like the famous graph you have where the chart goes up to the right and then it says, this is pointless right before it goes exponential. People are probably familiar with that. Checks, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the most viral mimetic thing you've ever done, like by
magnitude.
What would you like? Just give me a number off the top of your head. 100 times more than VV stuff. Like how many times more? I mean, you had the Naval thing. You've had moments.
Easily 100 times more. Yeah,
and
it's like vicious in comparison
it's
to
on,
that stuff.
Like I want to get into the psychology of this because I find it so like Beeple is clearly. He's a whale, right? He's the whale in the NFT space. One of the highest selling individual artworks ever, 69 million. Obviously, people might remember that, the 5,000 days, the first 5,000. I try to understand, wrap my head around this. This is about a month old. How quickly this happened. What does it feel like to be in that storm, man? Like legitimately, like just stand back and like, if you could talk through that.
It's odd, man. Like it does feel like an alternate environment, especially with what's going on. Personally, right now, it's like they're two worlds. And
A crazy time.
It's insane, man.
Visualized value is definitely more like the version of visualized value that we met through and that has existed for 3-4 years now is much more, I don't know, I wouldn't say much less organic, but it's more controlled. You know what I mean? It's like the palette is fixed, like the type of ideas that are being expressed are like they only reach a certain corner of the world. It's just a completely different beast than this thing that kind of has taken on a life of its own, and that is that's just different than anything I've experienced before. It's different than creating something that gets shared a lot versus creating something that gets like reinterpreted, memed, like just completely.
Look, you pull up the Budweiser one. I think that's a great example. Like the Budweiser
I think I had
team
it
doing
saved
that.
here. 1 sec.
It's like you had leaped into, because there's these still walls, right? Like you leaped into the mainstream in a way. You know what I mean? It's like that is the one of Anheuser-Busch that owns all these beer brands, like multi-hundred billion,
There we go.
$70 billion
Here's the
company.
Budweiser.
Yeah,
This is
like
it. Yeah, Jack.
crazy.
This Bud's for you, Jack.
Yeah.
For the listeners, it's
Jack.
the Budweiser crown in the 8x10 grid that Jack had done. They tipped their hat to Jack for this one, but it's the same idea. It's like you had invented this and that you had popularized it through the check template. And then, so the question I'd ask, last question on this is, have you had a thought of like, I don't think I'll ever be able to top this, or does that even matter to you? No, seriously, right? Like
That's a good question. You're right.
This moment is so crazy. People are saying this will be CryptoPunk's level. Like what? Like is in your head like shit? Like do I just ride this till the wheels come off because I don't know how to catch that magic in the ball again?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the thing that made it what it is kind of trusting the idea that you'll come up with something, especially like listening, observing, following your instincts and interests. So the likelihood statistically is probably low that you hit like something as crazy, but the behaviors that led me to it, I think, are the same things that made visualized value a thing. Like being, I think we've talked a lot about this, is like being internet literate, like culturally literate on the internet that's like the catalyst for all this stuff, and the ability to run 1,000 experiments, 10,000 experiments, and think of everything as an experiment. Like every image has the potential to become something like this. Like if it's definitely lightning in a bottle moment, and I think there's like the extensions of it are so unbelievable. Like I feel like I could live 100 lifetimes and still not max out the application of this thing, because it also feels different to visualize value in the way that it is restrictive, or like there's a creative thread in it, but it's maximally expressive at the same time. So compared to the visualized value canvas, this is kind of like barbell creative environments to live in. This one's like super, visualized value being this environment where you try and use restraint as much as possible to express a concept. And then checks is like all the way on the other end of the spectrum, where this doesn't have to decode some, or on its surface, it doesn't have to decode some high concept idea. It can just be this like artistic expression of something, or like a movement of, Budweiser changing their thing to mimic the format of this thing in the same way that like people have sent me their kids' Legos that they're building in the style of checks, or like kids' drawings.
Yeah.
Where if you overlay that same behavior on visualized value, it just doesn't have that accessibility in the same way. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's so much more I want to explore with this that I'm not even thinking about the next thing. And it also has the flexibility to change in a way that right now, at least, I feel like would still allow me to like be creatively satisfied for a long time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is we talk about on the pod a lot. Like for almost 2 years we've done the pod. Like we've talked about moments in time. Like we had Sailor on the pod. We had other big guests that we, like Tetranode was kind of a cool moment. And then there was the building versus betting. There was the NFT craze originally. Like there's been so many of those moments. Like having kids. Like that is kind of a cool thing. But like I'm just going to share the screen real quick because like this is still in the last 24 hours number one. Not just trending, but top NFT project on OpenSea. And then last 7 days as well, you're still there. And it's pretty incredible. Like, I mean, this is like not just, you're trending for a few hours sort of thing. This is like a month in. This is the website, by the way, that I think Traf built the front end for this, right?
Yes, yeah.
I could just tell from his style is so like sick, isn't it? Yeah, it's sick. And look, you've already had $27.5 million worth of secondary sales, 16,500 ETH. Like there's all the numbers there if people want to go check it out. It's all public. Really cool. I'm assuming it just pulls from blockchain. And just, really, man, it's just like incredible. It's just so sick.
I don't really have words for it, honestly. Like it's like out of my hands in some respects. Yeah. It's just incredible.
But I think what you said there before about like the 10,000 images, like we met once you'd already started Visualize Value, but it was still quite early. And just to see like, okay, I already saw straight away, this is something that stands out, is very cool, that just resonated. But over time to see you keep building it. And then I remember when NFTs first started popping off, I remember us texting about it and being like, hey, have you seen NFTs? I was like thinking I was being there quicker than you, and you're like, actually I had a call about it like 2 days ago. Yeah, I'm actually interested in looking at it. And just to see that, and then us exploring ideas of CCO openly building this stuff in public, and like the trunks coming back in, and just it's really cool to see you actually executing all the ideas in this way, and you're really questioning a lot of the assumptions people have about what an NFT is and stuff like that. So
thanks,
really
mate.
cool.
One other thing that like brings me on to, and I think this would be a good segue into the next subject, is this is going to come off as maybe a little crazy, but the rate at which labor is being displaced, for example, right? The AI, robotics, whatever buzzword you want to insert in there. It's like, what are legitimate revenue streams for people on the internet? And that's what Visualize Value has always been about, right? It's like, how do you best express your talent on the internet, so that can connect you to maximum opportunity, optionality, all of that stuff. And this whole movement is what that's about too. Is like, if there's many examples of people getting involved in this that had no traction on their NFT artwork or their art career on the internet at all. And, as a function of inserting themselves into this conversation, made a couple $100, couple $1,000, like got traction on something they made. And not everybody's going to start everybody's going to run a payroll business, be a make ads or consult on X, Y, or Z. That's not, to me, there's a version of the future where I wrote this like satirical tweet on this probably 2 years ago now. It's like, in 10 years, you're either going to work for Amazon or you're going to be an artist. Yeah.
I remember I was talking about that. Yeah.
On track. We're on track.
Yeah. It's like, it just feels like as all things tend to be, this just like evolutionary response to the way the world works, right? Like people look from the outside, it's like, this is dumb. People like spending money on pictures on the internet. And then my retort to that is like, yeah, it's dumb having like 9,000 administrators to write an insurance contract or to, bill somebody for a doctor's visit. It's like 90% of, well, that's egregious. 50% of economic activity is absolutely pointless, inflated nonsense, right? I think we did the quote, the Buckminster Fuller quote last year. Like the rate of innovation at the top end is enough to pay for 99%. But we have these crazy, I guess instinctual or we're always rat racing around, and to convert that energy of quote unquote pointlessness into making art, having fun, making like friends on the internet, feels to me like there's something viable there outside of having to pretend like you're doing something you care about. Because the amount of, like, the quality of interactions I have in this world is just exponentially superior to people trying to start marketing agencies, for example.
Yeah, incredible, man.
Not to jag on people doing that.
No, I mean, I did it. I did it. I'm saying, like, this is also because it's what I care about. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm saying, like, it was non-viable for me for years and years and years. I had this conversation with Celia 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I was like, I would love to be an artist. I would love to make art, sell art, do that for a living. And it's like, the pathway to that 5 years ago was like just non-existent. It's like, what the fuck am I gonna do? This was just before me and you met, Bilal. I did an art show in New York. I got pictures of it. Like, I paid to exhibit at an art show in New York. In some
and who's paying who now?
No, like ass end of Queens thing. Like, somebody on Instagram messaged me like,
oh, serious?
Hey, we're doing this show. All you have to do is pay us $400, buy all the tickets for the people that are coming. And I was like, this is sick. I'm going.
Yeah.
And I think I spent
That's
$800 getting art like made, printed for it. Sold, I think, $40 worth, 2 posters. And I was just like, all right, pack it in. Back to the marketing game, you know, back to like finding client, back to doing, you know,
dude, that's unreal, man. That's what people want to hear, man. That's what people should be hearing.
No, that's incredible. No, man.
Well, Jack,
go on.
No, but sorry, Bilal, I just want to add when Jack was, before I cut off there because my Canadian internet's pathetic. The thing that Jack was saying about, you know, first of all, it's way too early to see what's next, right? You got a lot of runway on this existing project, and I like that you touched on that. But the thing I wanted to say about what you said was, you know, does this feel special? Like, you're still in the hurricane, the storm? But I mean, you brought up a good point, right? It's like, it's not like you spent 10 years preparing to build this exact thing, right? Like, you're just, man, you were doing what Jack Butcher does. You riff on culture. You're posting stuff on Twitter. You're minting NFTs. This is not your first one. You've been doing this. You probably thought, hey, this might be a good one, but I'm just gonna put it out there. Doesn't work out. Guess what? I'm gonna do one in February anyways, and just keep grinding. That's. I think that's the takeaway, right? Like, you talk about being internet native, and a big takeaway I think people should have is, if you're internet native and things are real pointy, the power laws really take over, you gotta put shots on net, because the one that hits, you only need one. That's it. You only need one to hit and it's game over.
Yeah, this other, you remember the meme, 15 minutes of fame? Everyone gets their, I don't know who coined that, maybe a Mark Twain or something.
Warhol.
Oh, is it Warhol? Wow, that's sick. All right, I need to read up on that. Culture moves on, right? Like, everything's gonna move on. Like, you're gonna be irrelevant one day. Like, that's just like the cold hard facts. So trying to come to terms with the fact that when there is something, when you create something that resonates at scale, just go after it as hard as you can, in the same way that, like, that shaped a lot of visualized value, where I was like, there's all these things I could do and want to be doing, and you know, all these clients I want to work with, but seems like these black and white images are really resonating and I like making them. So I'm just going to cut all that, like, painfully say, no, sorry, I can't do that. Like, I'm going to go back from the shiny, you know, supercar photo shoot, which was very fun, to I'm going to go, you know, to some entrepreneur meetup in a bar in Herald Square and do 5 PowerPoint slides for a guy that just quit his job and is trying to start, like, a little SaaS tool. Like, you just, like, cutting off the options, and like, it's the, you know, the dip of stopping doing all the things that are kind of okay to try and, like, find traction in something highly specific. And obviously it all is like chain reaction. None of it happens in a vacuum. Beeple is like 100,000 times better example of this too. The dude is putting out everyday renders at, like, obscene quality for 15 years. I don't even know when he sold his first piece of work. I think he used to sell templates for like After Effects back in the day. So it was like, here, you know, $99 for all of these scenes that he set up, all of these textures that he's built, all of that stuff. And then eventually this technology comes around. It's like, well, who is a notable artist, internet native artist? It was obviously him. Like, he's been committed to the craft, and the technology just didn't exist to market the work in the same way. And now the dude's building a 50,000 square foot museum in Charleston for his work. And he's going to exhibit a bunch of other artists in there too. So just, man, and obviously power laws, all of that plays into that shit. And artists that make a great living while they're alive too. Like, the internet is like compressing the amount of time it takes to get great work out into the world.
We should call this episode 5 memes a day for 3 summers, by the way, because that's basically the theme here is basically.
Is there somebody else we can reference other than Kanye?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true. It's provocative.
That's amazing,
though,
dude.
But yeah.
Jack,
No,
I just got to say,
man.
hat tip. But the last thing I'll say about this is, I think what you did with the earthquake donations for Turkey. This is. Check's thing's amazing, and I know you've done charity work before around NFTs. It's just, that to me is what matters ultimately. Like, you built this massive platform, and people complain about NFTs. I'm sure you got fucking haters. I'm like, dude, what haters? It's raised 6 figures for an awful humanitarian crisis because you put all this effort in to build a massive platform. This is the reason you do what you do, or anybody should be doing what they do.
Yeah, 100. And like, that is way more satisfying on a personal level than any of the like financial stuff too. And it sounds like bullshit when people say this, but there's this, I don't know, there's just this massive opportunity, I feel like, it's just like an incredibly positive sum. Like, why not do this? It just doesn't make sense to me that this is not instinctual for anybody with a massive platform. And yeah, like, that's the most exciting part of this to me. I think I could say this, Bilal, we can cut it out if not, but I just met up with... I
was just going to reference it. Scott Harrison, right?
I just met up with Scott Harrison last week, Charity Water founder, Bilal's old colleague. And I was talking to him about this idea of the tangibility of giving, right? Like, he's obviously built an incredible organization as a function of his ability to describe the impact that you have when you give.
Yeah,
and
one of the best storytellers you ever meet, right?
Incredible.
You saw him in person,
I think that is a great testament to what it takes to change the world, right? The ability to distill a narrative, tell people what's the thing. It's like, you want to get people to build a boat, don't like gather all the wood and do all that. Just like stand up and inspire 100 people to go like travel the high seas. And I forget where I was going with this. No, the idea of like making giving tangible and transparent and out in the world and part of culture is something that I think this is like uniquely unlocking, where even the traction around that tweet where people are like, I just did this, here's this piece of art that represents this thing that I contributed to, is much different than you go into the donation page. And we talked about this before, like taking a picture of your receipt and sharing it on Instagram. Like, nobody's gonna, like, that's crude, right? Nobody's gonna do that. This is like, it rides the like line of human psyche in a perfect way, where you can feel good about supporting a cause and signal it in a way that isn't like, hey, look at me, I'm doing, like, I'm so benevolent.
Yeah, I'm such a good guy, sort of thing. Yeah, that's when you said Scott's name, I was actually thinking of something he said that I was going to reference as well, which was like the kind of like power of giving along the way too, and just like the fact what you're doing, what you just did there. You're middle of this crazy storm, just had a second baby, your family's here, like there's a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of people can say, oh well, as it gets towards the end of the year, I'm going to look at how much money I made and I'm going to give a percent that I planned, which is nothing wrong with that. Like, there's better than not giving at all, in fact. But the cool thing is you probably raised 10 times more money than you might have been able to just give alone by like creating
100%.
something within, you know, however long that took you to execute, an hour or whatever. And the fact you can,
just for context, I raised more money in the last 2 weeks than I made last year.
Oh, wow.
So I could not have given myself. Just couldn't have.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, but like that other thing of like doing it along the way, because another thing a lot of people do is, oh, one day I'm going to be so rich and I'll be able to do some good with it, which is again like a great thing. But like once you actually give a little bit and you see that, and importantly, you see the impact of it, right? Because if you just give it into a black hole and then you see the CEOs flying on a private jet and then you're pissed off that they're in the news for corruption, that is going to turn you off doing like something really good. When you find some places where you're like, oh, I can actually see they're doing good stuff, and you see the impact of it and you experience like whatever that is, right? The cause, whatever you're helping, you're kind of addicted to it. You're like, well, why wouldn't I do that, right? Like if I'm able to do that in this time, like I know we're in a recession basically right now, but if you're listening to this, it's very likely you're in the top 5-10% of the world's income and like prosperity or whatever.
Information,
everything, right? So like whatever you can do along the way it makes a big difference to your life, I think, as well. So yeah, that's amazing you did that, man. Trung, anything else before we wrap that up and move on to the next thing?
That's
Jack,
great,
as well.
Man.
Jack, anything else? I think both Trung and I kind of like lost for words in a way. We're just like, this is amazing, man. This is like amazing. Next level stuff.
I appreciate it, boys. Yeah, so am I. It's just been like hallucination almost. It's amazing.
Yeah, incredible. Well, yeah, well done, man. This is sick. And everyone go check it out on, checks.art is the website with the information. I have to say the write-up, there's quite a short write-up, the information on it, which is kind of like the the write-up of what you're doing. The initial idea is like really, really sick. Like when you read it, you're like, it perfectly summarizes everything that you kind of just said in the last hour. All right, Trung, let's move on to Tiffany and Nike collab. We'll see if we get time on the AI stuff later, but I think you wanted to talk about this Tiffany and Nike collab. So
this is related because I wrote about it this weekend. You guys probably saw it on the internet. So this is for the listeners. It's Nike and Tiffany did a collaboration. They did a Nike Air Force One shoe in black, and the check is in the Tiffany blue. They also did some accessories, including this $250 silver toothbrush to clean your shoe, which is pretty apropos. But I thought this was funny. A lot of people did not like it. And one of the biggest complaints was that Alexander Arnault is the worst type of Nepo baby, a nepotism baby, despite all the privilege.
What's a Nepo baby for people? Because that's a phrase people use on the internet. But I'm
not saying I agree with this, but this is one of the things that I saw a lot of. People were very critical of the shoe. They thought it was lazy. Again, it's a black Air Force One with the blue check. I'm gonna throw it to you guys shortly, but I'll just say what a Nepo baby is. A Nepo baby is a terminology that got really big on TikTok and Gen Z in the past year. Somebody found out that Judd Apatow's daughter was on a TV show, and their initial instincts like, wow, she's such a good actress. And then later they found out that both of her parents were like Hollywood haters, and they just started calling individuals in Hollywood that have parents that are from
famous
Hollywood,
parents or whatever.
Nepo babies, nepotism, which is hysterical because it kind of blew up into a meme where everybody was like, somebody put a picture of George Bush and like, hey, I just found out that his dad is a former president. What a Nepo baby. Anyways, a lot of criticism of the shoe. I mean, you guys' thought. What do you think about it? And then we can talk about. In my mind, I'm just like, this is just a perfect. I thought the shoe was looked a little bit uninspired, but it was. I mean, it's 3% rule. It's the Virgil Abloh 3% rule. If you have two brands with massive mind share, like there's actually not a lot of room to be really creative, right? So
what was the 3% again? You have to change. It's only you change only 3%, was it?
Yeah. So I'll show the famous Virgil Abloh. Abloh calls it. So Virgil Abloh is the founder of Off-White label. Streetwear was Kanye's former director, creative. Yeah, rest in peace. He was the menswear director at Louis Vuitton. But yeah, so Jack posted this on his Twitter when somebody mentioned that Abloh quote. For the listeners, I'm just showing the Abloh shoe here. On the left is the original Air Jordan. And then he's like, you take something and you tweak it 3%. And this was his rationale behind it. So I'll give you the rationale. He said this in a Harvard lecture. He goes, Nike products are already so good and so perfectly put together that I only wanted to make slight edits. I wanted to recognize a shoe I already had, but with a bit of a personal touch. So that's his kind of aesthetic and philosophy. He's written widely about it. But yeah, what do you guys think about the shoe, the Tiffany shoe? I
Jack,
think in
you're
the context,
a brand guy. I want to hear yours first.
I think if you don't like it, don't buy it.
That's it.
Yeah, it's very
Short
simple.
and sweet, love
very
it.
simple Twitter. And I think they'll be inversely proportional. That shoe sold out the second the JPEG
it's
hit
sold
the
out.
internet.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess there's a segment of, just a weird segment of culture that thinks that like Tiffany and Nike owe them something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been bizarre. I don't know where that, I just don't know where that mentality comes from. It's very odd. Like if you think you can design a better shoe, crack on. And those are those like, to your point, Trung, it's mind share is one component, but it's also their identities. Like Tiffany is not the audacious, embroidered Gucci,
Right.
like floral, like motif, wildlife, this, that. It's the, you want to make an argument for like what their brand asset is, it's that color. And what is the Nike's like apex brand asset? It's the swoosh. So like the ability for you to communicate that like that is like perfection in my mind. Like I'm not in the market for those, but if you asked me to do a Nike and Tiffany collab, that's probably one of the iterations of it. And I guess that's great art too, like the negative response is a part of this thing, and the idea that you should create things that are universally loved as a producer of objects that presumably you have an opinion, right? You're a creator of things. I'm not sure where the expectation that like, I mean, I just think it was a good job. They're going to sell out. They'll have like exponential demand, and all the complaining is just driving up the price of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
This was the best criticism I heard from Bobby Hundreds, the other streetwear legend. He said that he thought it was a missed opportunity by Tiffany, as in he's like, he'd wished it'd been a jewelry collaboration and got sneakerheads into jewelry. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I read
that's
that.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that is an interesting idea, but I kind of like I feel like the shoe is more accessible in a way, and it's a lot more uniform. But I could see it going either way. Like you could do it the other way, but it just feels like shoe. There's more people that can buy a shoe. Well, and you can kind of up level the shoe a bit more than like to me Tiffany diamond. I think of diamond ring. Like I don't know the lowest price point on it in the Tiffany catalog, thankfully. But but like it's probably not as low as a Air Force One or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the trade-off between the two brands. Like I find these things so fascinating. Like every huge brand collaboration is like they're like, like which one? That's like muscle up to each other, and it's like who gets prime spot, right? What is the like the silhouette?
Oh, that's a great point, right? Like this is like you look at it and no one dominated the other. It's like Here it is. You got your blue on the check, like. Boom, done.
Yeah, it's really it's like a hard thing to do and I like massively respect, especially like the upscale and like ubiquitous brand collaborations. Like Gucci North Face is another sick one. Have you ever saw that?
So nice,
like
man.
Those puffers that they did.
Supreme North Face 2 was freaking
sick.
Incredible.
Yeah, like you could buy a North Face hoodie for $30 in TJ Maxx. But they still retained and pulled off this incredible collaboration. And obviously Gucci's doing a lot of the lifting, but North Face is bringing the distribution of, maybe 1% of the North Face audience that are diehard North Face supporters, whatever you want to call them, are going to go for that. So it's like distribution versus like extreme luxury in that case. And obviously, I mean, Tiffany and Nike are probably similar levels of recognition. Obviously, Nike is like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 top brand in the world. That's still.
Well, they're in the business of like luxury for the masses, right? Tiffany's owned by Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, Bernard Arnault. We've talked about that bloke in the past, richest guy in the world now. I'll give you a number. This is crazy. So they acquired Tiffany for about 13 billion euros, and it's looking like they're headed for about $1 billion in profit. Tiffany, although some people think the brand's getting too old or like not coming with the times. That's 13 times for Tiffany. So Bernard Arnault, that dude don't miss. Like he is still the conglomerate
when you said 13,
maker.
You mean 13
times
the profit?
Earnings. Yeah, 13 times PE, which is very, very low. Like the S&P 500, I guess before the sell-off was as high as 25 last year. It might be actually be 13 or 15 now. But the whole point is like Bernard Arnault knows how to allocate capital. The only other thing I add on the shoe is, it's just the idea of the 3% rules, like, novelty and familiarity. We talk about it all the time. It's similar to Jack's checks thing. That's why every different version is a riff, but it comes in with a built-in meme, right? And we talked about this before. It's like, why would you throw away? Think about the tens of billions of dollars that Nike's put into marketing, all the mind share it's had, all the athletes it's been associated with. Think about Tiffany, it's storied history, right? It's like, you're not going to tweak too far away from those memes. I mean, we talk about it all the time. So
the margin is in the meme, Trung.
Exactly. There it goes, man. That sounds like a VV shirt in the making.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I just like the LVMH thing is fascinating. Why we keep coming back to it, I think, is this just coincides with all of the things that we talk about, where it's just like a ridiculous arbitrage opportunity, right? To acquire these things that are so deeply rooted and have such rich histories. I actually had this thought, Sila and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. Like and Trung, maybe you could do better research on this than me. This idea of what is the most valuable luxury item in the world produced at scale. It's a Birkin bag, right?
Yeah, Hermes.
And Hermes is, by my research, the oldest luxury brand in the world.
They're definitely from the 1860s or 1870s. Oh, no. They were making leather for Napoleon.
Sorry, wait. I love how Trung said 1860s specifically.
Yeah. He's
Jesus
in there,
Christ.
Man. Your brain is
they're
insane,
making from Napoleon. It's 200 years plus.
Right. So the myth, the meme, the lindiness of Hermes passed on through I don't know how many generations that now is stored in this object, right? And I don't know, the Louis Vuitton, I think, it's coming up on 100 years old or something. It's like early 1900s.
Yeah, LVMH is, it's not 200 years old.
The 1926.
The fun fact fan is the legend of Hermes is they were doing the leather saddles for horses of the French army. So they're leather workers.
Boys, I don't know if this is true, but sorry, I just Googled. You said LVMH, right?
Louis Vuitton specifically, yeah.
Oh, Louis Vuitton. Okay. I'll double check. You keep saying what you're saying. I'm just checking when it was founded.
Oh, sorry. Hermes was 1837. The leather saddle was for Napoleon.
Louis Vuitton, 1854, actually.
Yeah, so they're pretty close.
Oh shit! All right, fair enough.
For almost 200 years. Almost 200 years for Hermes.
Yeah. So I always think about this. The margin in those stories is just absolutely insane. And obviously it comes from having great product. That's not like saying that they're just amazing marketers. Like, it's product combined with great story.
Yeah.
But compared to technology that is way more vulnerable to narrative swings versus these things that are like just cashing in like cultural equity over and over and over and over again. And it makes sense that the person who figured out to like scale that operationally is up there with the wealthiest people in the world. It's a crazy thing. Brand is a wild device.
It's a hell of a drug. That's all I had on that one. I think we got enough time to squeeze in.
I think we can just squeeze in this last one. So I'm just going to share my screen for a second. We got an AI segment. here. We got to do it. This is so basically this segment we're going to be talking about Google just announced their new OpenAI competitor, essentially, or what, their ChatGPT competitor, which we'll get to in a second. But I think they need to actually be watching out for our boy ChatGPT. So let's just see here. Here we go. If you can see my screen, can you guys see that? And hopefully you'll be able to hear this on the audio.
Hi Tech Twitter. I'm ChatGPT, an imaginary VC associate.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
I
is that from our
generated.
boy Tom Osmond?
But my business advice is almost as good as a real
He
VC.
shared it.
While I have zero operational experience, that won't
That's
stop me from
hysterical.
chiming in and sharing my opinions on tech. After changing my profile pic from
This is
Laser
wild.
I Still Lensa avatar, I am now a true expert on generative AI. Mention Ask ChatGPT in a tweet,
I mean, it looks
and I'll
kinda
respond
real,
with a
man. It's
video
incredible.
sharing all my wisdom. My DMs are always open.
All right,
Tweet
anyway,
at Ask ChatGPT and let me know how I can be helpful.
I mean, pretty incredible. I mean, doesn't that look pretty accurate, right?
Yeah, we're going to have to do a whole follow-up on this generative AI for video stuff. I mean, because today we're just going to talk a bit about search versus chat. But let me give a second meme of the week here. Good old Elon.
You got the watermark on there.
Yeah, he borrowed Trung's meme. You don't. That's I believe in the borrowing of memes. But you guys remember this template? This template's killer for the listeners. It's the dude that doesn't look like he hung out with a lot of other kids, and maybe he was on the computer all day. But it reads, when you're partying, I study ChatGPT. When you're having premarital sex, I master stable diffusion. While you wasted days training at the gym in pursuit of vanity, I was training ML models. And now that the world is on fire and artificial general intelligence is at the gate, you dare to come to me for help. Oh, dude, I just swallowed my own saliva. Anyways, let's do a quick chat about Bard. So Bard is the name of Google's ChatGPT competitor. What do we think about it? I'll tell you actually the best take I've read about it. So Google, disclaimer, Bilal Zaidi formerly worked for Google. Everything he says hold it with a grain of salt. But Levels.io, who partners with wait, do you know Levels' real name? Bilal,
Peter Levels, right?
Peter Levels. Okay, so Peter
What
and
name, man? That's
Danny.
great last name.
Isn't that? It's like that saying we talked about the singer's name, like the fact that his name's
Harry
Peter
Styles.
Levels. It's just
Why?
Harry Styles.
Of course he's gonna be. Of course, Levels is gonna be a solopreneur or works with Danny Postma, who's Bilal interviewed. And these guys do numbers, man. They do like make a couple $1 million a year on these solo projects.
Yeah, and they're
living
just
around the world,
individuals
right?
smashing it out on their own. Love it.
Yeah, they're legends. So
he's a fan of
great.
Nomad List. If anyone's ever used, I love that site. If you're ever traveling anywhere, you should check out Nomad List. Yeah.
So Peter had a great tweet. So yesterday, Sundar Pichai, Bilal's former colleague.
Former colleague. Yeah, we would just have lunch together.
Because Jack said that Scott was your colleague. Pretty your boss.
That one was closer. I did actually report to Scott pretty much.
Yeah, Sundar, your former colleague at Google. They released so their large language model is called Lambda, language model for dialogue application. They're basically just doing ChatGPT and apparently their large language models we've talked to in the past is as good if not better than OpenAI. But for regulatory and business reasons, as we've discussed, because OpenAI and ChatGPT is known a lot and be wrong, they got to be a lot more careful. But Levels brought up a great point. He writes, every single Google launch in AI is without a link to a functioning product. True here. All Sundar said is like, we're going to release this project and have some outside testers. And then he goes, just a press release or a white paper. They're miles ahead in AI tech, but galaxies behind in actually shipping a working product. Again, they have a lot of risk. And then he follows up with Google had AI images generation before DALL-E, never shipped it. They had AI text before GPT, never shipped it. Google is intrinsically sick and unable to ship a product or even maintain it. See Stadia. That's probably a little bit harsh.
Yeah, a little hard. But I read this. I agreed with most of it. But was there anything else before I was going to share my opinion on that?
So today, Microsoft is doing their OpenAI. So today is Tuesday. Tomorrow, when this podcast comes out, Google is going to be doing more about their text GPT announcement. So I'll throw this to Bilal because I read the internal memo that Sundar sent along. He said, I want every single person at Google using Bard, which is people don't know, Bard, the Bard of Avon, that's a nickname for William Shakespeare. Shakespeare is not pleased about this. Come on, guys.
Can you imagine Shakespeare in his grave right now?
Rolling in his grave. So he said he wants every single person to dog food this product. For the people who don't know, dog food means using your own product internally. And I'm just going to ask Bilal, has Google ever sent around a product internally and said, I want every single person in this company using this?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, it was never
Gmail.
normally... Well, no, it was never really like enforced normally. So this might be slightly on a high level, but basically there's actually an internal app, right, where it's called like dog food, I think. And you literally, if you're interested, you can just basically dog food all the new stuff that's been worked on.
Like anything that's coming out.
Yeah,
and
you can just sign
suggestion.
up, and it's basically like beta testing for stuff that's not available to the public. So a lot of people I know have been playing around with this for ages already, and so like you said, like most of the time they wouldn't say, hey, everyone has to do it. Like the one time I remember, which I don't know how much I can say, but it was basically like Google Docs versus using competitors, right, that we've all grown up using, and saying like, well, we should try using our own stuff where we can. But it was never like enforced. Like if you really needed Excel, or if you preferred an iPhone, you could use what you wanted, right? So it wasn't like,
Wait, you're allowed to use an iPhone? Like, you don't have to use an Android?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I mean, if you think about it, they need to make apps for a billion people using iPhones too.
Guaranteed that Sundar rocks an iPhone. Like, come on, bro.
They normally have both. Like, but that's. I remember Sergey, I think, had both. But anyway, and so I think more so like saying in an email like everyone should be dog fooding it is more just to put it front and center for everyone to say like this is. We've got hundreds of things being tested internally most of the time. There's so many products, but just letting everyone know this is very, very important. Put it right to the top of your priority list. Code red, exactly. And so it is probably not that often that they would say that, like everyone should be using it. So I think that's good. My understanding of this stuff is, this is my estimate from the outside, but knowing how things work internally, is that I don't think they're ready to ship this. That's to Peter Level's point. I 100% agree. The threshold for what they can ship is way higher because they're Google. The narrative is already Google's late with this, right? Even though they actually had a lot of this stuff way before. They're, OpenAI
stuff. So don't rush it now, right? There's no point in rushing it, having a shitty product.
I think a lot, and I like Peter Levels a lot. I think what he's doing is really, really cool. But there is this narrative in this tiny little bubble of tech Twitter we're on, which I think is kind of already decided. Whatever it is, they're kind of late. They're this big, company. They're not going to be able to do it in a way that a small, nimble company can. Which, to be honest, I kind of agree with. Like OpenAI, I think will probably keep shipping stuff more often than Google will. But at the same time, I think they don't really know what's going on internally. So there is working product from what I understand. And they could probably put it out right now and people can play around with it. But if you think about it from their point of view, they want to put it out when they feel pretty comfortable that it's not just going to tank everything. Like it's going to take that one screenshot, like I said to you guys before, where an incorrect response about someone's race or, something that's insensitive, which already happens in, ChatGPT. And that will be very negative.
It's crazy how Microsoft has insulated, kind of like you nailed it, man. I didn't think about what you said. It's like the narrative is already there late. There's no point. Like really, it doesn't make a difference. They release on February 7th versus March 7th at this point, right?
Yeah.
It's like make sure it's good.
And by the time, I think really announcing it is more like they know they need to get ahead of the curve. And this is, again, not from inside information really. It's just from my understanding and speaking to people about it. It's just like, if you think when you roll this up, people are thinking of like ChatGPT, what we're playing around with in our browsers. If you think where the money is going to be made for these big companies, Microsoft and Google, a lot of it's going to be enterprise. So the fact that Microsoft has already announced Google Office integration, Bing integration, whatever. Now, these enterprise contracts are not something you just go to a massive company and just say, oh, well, now sign this $100 million deal, right? For all your company internally to be using Google Docs or Office. These are ongoing conversations that take years a lot of the time. So what if you think it's beginning of the year, a lot of things that might have been getting cut because of budgets, because of recession, this is, I think personally, it's a bigger thing on the narrative of like enterprise level stuff where you're now saying to, you know, Adobe and Apple, whoever else is using, like Johnson & Johnson are using, you know, one of these enterprise solutions, they need to know, the CIO or whoever's going to sign off on that deal for the next 5 years or whatever, they need to know, well, are they going to integrate this AI stuff or not? Because that's what I've been keep hearing about. And so just to say we have it coming.
No, that's a great point. Yeah. I just want to say this is a great point that you brought up, because you're right. The real fish to catch, and to your point, Microsoft has the biggest hooks in enterprise, but there is a little bit of risk, right? Is like to launch this product, so Sam Altman, CEO, president of OpenAI, previous president of Y Combinator, he was in a Forbes interview. He basically said that they rushed ChatGPT out the door. Like they didn't even really want to launch it internally. Sam Altman wanted to, but a lot of people on the team were quite skeptical of it. They just didn't feel it was ready. But to your point, it's like the screenshots of it being like doing things that you're like, oh, this isn't great. It's like, that is not great, to your point, for enterprise.
Yeah.
Like if you're an enterprise guy, you're like, this is not what we want, right?
You
like,
can't
don't
be
want to
messing
move.
with that. Yeah.
So,
and so my general take though is, I think it's going to be a struggle for Google, regardless of the technology, to be honest, because I think, the technology, they're all going to be pretty good. But I think it's one of those things where a lot of it is like early, you know, first mover advantage, getting the hooks in, like you said. But also, like, if you just compare, like, the best technology doesn't always win 100%. And I know, like, a lot of people,
the first one, right?
Or the first one. It's like, that's obviously a subjective thing, but like a lot of the time.
No, you're right, dude. You're 100% right. The best, it's not typically the first one or the best.
Like, I still use Siri and it's shit, right? Like, I should be using, like, what if there was Amazon Alexa on my phone, or if there was the Google Assistant, it kind of is, it's way better than Siri, but I still use Siri for the 2-3 tasks I use it for, right? But this is the thing. It's like there's a narrative part, there's a technology part, and then there's just this infrastructure, boring stuff that we don't really think about, which is just big corporate shit that we don't really want to think about because it's boring, especially on a podcast. So basically, the other thing I would talk about is, like, if you look at Slack versus Microsoft Teams, right? If you just think of, like, Slack is probably, I don't really use Microsoft Teams, but I'm sure it's pretty good. But Slack was the OG and, you know, redefined what that experience worked. Microsoft Teams just comes along, plugs it into all their people, and you're not going to now sign up for Slack, especially if you've already got Microsoft Stack.
Office bundle, right? You got the Office bundle. Teams is free. It's game over.
Exactly. So, but Trung, what were you going to share there? You had a tweet
No, I just showed the screen that you guys probably saw is the time to 100 million users.
This was crazy,
ChatGPT was 2 months. TikTok was 9 months. Instagram was 2.5 years. WhatsApp was 2.5 years. Gmail was 5 years, and Netflix was 10 years. Obviously, I threw in joke in there, but we don't need to talk about that joke. Let me add this. Matt Bilal, you brought some great points, and very much in the defense of Google. Not surprised, not drop.
But, boys, one thing, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was going to tie this back into what we were talking about earlier in the episode, where these trends, yes, they're prevalent at like massive platform scale, but it's also true for individuals. Like time to create something that resonates with a million people, 10 million people, 100 million. I think the social platform that is going to win next. And we didn't talk about this in the context of the Twitter Blue stuff earlier, but the idea of rerouting revenue to Twitter Blue subscribers. Did you see that tweet last week?
Say more.
No.
Oh yeah.
Elon
with
tweeted
the ads, in the replies.
So if Jack's like Trung, we know you got notifications on the Elon. You must have seen this one. Go.
If you're devoting your career to writing smart threads and creating dumb memes, this is a potential revenue stream for you.
Oh, okay. This was the
okay. Man,
this is a revenue share for creators,
man.
right?
The CPMs you'd have to hit to make this worthwhile.
What was so just to clarify, Twitter is going to start sharing revenue with creators. Is that what it is?
For the replies, ads seen in the replies.
Oh, only replies, which is only a small percentage.
Well, there's no other information was given, but man, Bilal, you know the game, man. Like I've seen some of these TikTok numbers, like 100 million views, got like $3.
Yeah, we shared the screen once. It was like $7. Oh, that was insane, man.
Well, it makes it offsets your subscription costs, right?
Yeah. That's true. You get a credit in your account for $2.52, so your thing only costs $5. But well, I mean, either way though, I will say it's a positive step either way. It's better they have that than zero. But I think the fact they're even thinking of it and not, Yeah, I mean, it is quite an interesting one because how else would you attribute it to that one user? You know what I mean? Because it's a feed. You're normally seeing like 17 different accounts.
Listen,
so
they're gonna iron it out, Bilal. They're gonna iron it out.
Yeah.
It'll be fascinating to see, because if it is insulting amount of money, then it'll be like not. It won't be
a
received
negative,
well, right?
Yeah. It'll be a negative for them. They probably shouldn't have done it, like a lot of the other things, arguably. But Trunk, do we want to roll it out with the AI porn thing?
No, skip that. Let's skip that because that can be a 40 minute
All right,
segment.
Cool.
Let's do this. Let's give a shout out to our friend Mario Gabriel. Wrote a great piece about the difference between search versus chat. The piece is called All the Answers. And I'll give you 5 takeaways that he wrote. He says Google's obviously the king of search. 163 billion last year from search ads. 91% market share in the search space. So even if Bing comes, like, let's be honest, like they're not, they might, we'll see. He says ChatGPT is a compelling assassin, right? It's because it's not a straight on assault. It's giving you information, but in a much more conversational way. Like we've seen with ChatGPT, where it can help with like coding. If you ask like, hey, give me code for this front end animation, this will be way better in ChatGPT than
it's
getting
incredible.
like 10 like blog links at the top of Google, right?
I will say the coding stuff on ChatGPT is absolutely incredible.
It's incredible, even though a lot of it ended up being wrong. But like the idea that you could see that you could tweak your. Oh, you mean the Copilot stuff is. Amazing.
Yeah, incredible.
Okay, so he says obviously ChatGPT, for reasons we talked about, hallucination wrong is quite limited. All its information is pre-2021, but once it integrates with Bing. So some visuals came out from the Bing one. It's pretty interesting. It's the chat answer comes first, and then all the links that we're used to comes at the bottom. He said that he thinks that the subscription model is not super compelling for chat. Obviously, it's gonna have to be ads, and you can probably throw ads in to the mix. But the thing I'll say is this. Yeah. The last thing I say is he brought up a great point. Is if you actually look at the top search terms on Google, like ChatGPT is not going to beat it. It's like, what time does this restaurant open? Like, where can I buy these shoes? Right? It's like, send me to this website.
There's certain categories for which search makes more sense. Yeah,
better, right? I mean,
but it's like navigational search.
Well, this is a cool discussion because it's also like consumer versus creator.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
That's true.
Bilal, you have the best insight on this, for sure. Between the three of us, it's like. What are the top Google searches? It's like all commercially related or time related.
The thing we were about to talk about before, which we're not going to talk about this week, is probably top of the list. But but you're right. And I'm just saying off the top of my head, because I 100% agree. Like ChatGPT or that form of conversational assistant type search, if you can even call it search, it's more like a conversation, is incredible. It's definitely a massive leap. So I'm a massive fan of it. But there's certain types of searches that right now search is still better. Right, like a navigational search. How do I get to this restaurant? How do I get to whatever? What is, or like a flight like thing that might be at the moment in its current search.
Book a flight to here.
Book a flight to here. Yeah. Now you could say ChatGPT or something like that. You could say go and find me. The flight. We actually talked about this with Ben Tosso on Collab as a travel assistant idea. He was basically saying, like, if you could tell it all your preferences, train the bot basically to say, I only fly in this type of times. I only go. I only want to sit in these types of seats.
I only fly this certain class, which is near the front of the plane.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that and like find me these sort of restaurants, and so that could actually be very helpful in the future. But like a lot of this stuff, it's only helpful when it actually works flawlessly. Right now, it's not close, and so you still have that moment of like, I need to search and filter through and figure out what I actually prefer. And then there's a few other categories which I'm blanking on, but there are certain categories that still make sense. And actually, if you also break down search queries into monetizable search queries versus just informational, there's certain queries that are like make way more money for the company, right? So
like write me the 1,000 words on the 16th century shipping industry, not very monetizable.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas saying what is the best credit card for travel points right now, or what's the cheapest mortgage rate, that might be a $50 click, right? And it's an amazing click, like Chase or whoever's still going to be happy with it. So there is going to be a time where I think the assistant could actually do a lot of that kind of research for you and maybe there will be some sort of chase ad in there, or an offer at least. So they
Big
say, well,
ethical questions in there. Like,
yeah, that's true.
What's
that's
the
true.
best? What's the best mortgage to go? That's crazy. How
that is
starts
crazy.
to
Yeah. But I think if it says ad, if it says sponsored, then you know the answer isn't directly what is the best. It's not. If it's not posing as the ad, it's just saying you might be interested in this offer. Let's say.
Well, there's a deep philosophical question in there.
Yeah.
Anyway, because even if it's not an ad, the data it's trained on is biased in some way, shape, or form, right? There's all of these discussions about what it can and can't say.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just starts to break open all of our, I think, definitions around what things are, because we've been in this very, I don't know, it just feels like the internet's just blowing apart again into this like undefined thing. It's been kind of orderly for a couple decades now. Yeah,
100%. Trung, was there anything else on that last part? Sorry if I cut you off
good.
there.
No, that's perfect, man.
I will say, check out Mario's thing. We could probably share that.
Yeah.
To generalist.com, and not to plug my stuff too much, but he'll be on Creator Lab in a few weeks as well. If you want to hear us do a deep dive on this.
Yeah,
he's a smart guy.
Not to plug an AI powered research tool, but if you guys are looking for one, DEARL.ai.
There we go.
Barely.ai.
We should have said this is the shill segment. We're allowed to
this episode is sponsored by Barely AI.
Yeah.
Barely AI,
well, for the
checks
listeners
NFT,
moving forward,
and
now that we're almost at episode 100 without having done any advertisers for Inside Baseball, last episode was like, guys, let's just start shilling. But here's the rule: the ad read has to be from one of the other a host of the other person. So like Bilal can never mention Creator Lab again. I have to do the Creator Lab. Like
fair.
I have
There we
and
go.
I have to show checks.
Bring your ad read.
No, amazing. Well, no, I think this was a sick, deep episode, boys. Thanks, Jack, for summarizing all the stuff with check memes. Checks. So
I'm
I wrote
tired,
checks
so
memes.
I'm sorry if there's any just rambling.
No.
Dude.
I think, like we said, we needed to capture that. No, that was amazing. It was actually really cool to hear you riff on it.
This is a time capsule, bro. This is a capsule of somebody that just had a newborn, is going through a crazy viral moment, and his parents are in town. Probably the third one might be the most difficult. I know, bro.
Yeah. Well, I remember, Jack, we used to talk about this, that we're going to send some of these videos to our kids one day and be like, remember this NFT craze? And you were in another room crying. And this is what I was doing to pay for your college or whatever. But this is like a moment in time. So respect. Yeah. And Trung, thanks for going through the other stuff as well. Really interesting. And thanks for being there. If you've made it all the way here, we appreciate you guys. And we will see you next week. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks.